So we're going to be covering 4.1, graphing quadratic functions in standard form. Now, what is a quadratic function? Well, since today we're talking of the quadratic function in standard form, that is going to be y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So the first few slides, first page and a half of your notes is just vocabulary. Now, what is a parabola? A parabola is a U-shaped graph. So make sure you write these down, pause the video as much as you need to. Now, the vertex of a parabola is either going to be the lowest or highest point of the parabola. The lowest or highest point of a parabola graph or of the parabola, whichever way you want to see it. The axis of symmetry, we've heard of symmetry before. Symmetry divides stuff. Axis of symmetry, it has to go through a certain point. So the axis of symmetry is a vertical line that goes through the vertex. Because the vertex is either the highest or lowest point, it has to go through there. And once it goes through there, it splits it, it divides it into two equal parts. Now the maximum and minimum, that right there will be when we're talking about the vertex, but we're only going to consider the y value of the vertex point. So make sure we write down the definitions. It's just stuff that you need to know. Now moving on to the next one. We have the parent function of a quadratic function. The parent function of a quadratic function is y equals x squared. And that is the graph that they show you there. The origin is that little dot, which is 0, 0. That would be the vertex of the parabola. For this problem, the axis of symmetry is going to be the y-axis. So when you have problems like that, where your b is 0, we look for the vertex, and the vertex is going to be on the y-axis, which tells us that in order for it to be on the y-axis, the axis of symmetry has to be 0. Now, these are characteristics of the equation. The graph is going to open up when your a is greater than 0. So if the a is positive, it opens up. But if the a is negative, it's going to open down. So anytime a is less than 0, it's going to open down. The second bullet, we're not really going to talk too much about it in this lesson, but you have seen it before. Your graph is going to get narrow when the a is greater than 1, and it's going to get wider when it's less than 1. The next formula, the axis of symmetry is, we're going to have to use that formula, x equals negative b divided by 2a. This is also going to give you the x coordinate to the vertex. Now the y-intercept, and please remember the y-intercept is going to be on the y-axis, is going to be your c value. So my point's going to be 0, c. Now maybe it doesn't make sense right now because we don't have numbers, but it sure will later. Now, maximum and a minimum. When the graph has a minimum, like in that graph that the first one, it opens up, and in order for it to open up, your a has to be greater than 0. But when your graph opens down, because it is less than 0, that right there has the maximum point. So like I said, this first slide, it's all definitions. The next one is where we're going to be doing a lot of work. So the first thing you have to do is look at the equation that they give you, which in this case it's y equals negative x squared plus 4x minus 3. We have to identify the coefficients. So the a would be the number in front of x squared. In this case it just has a negative, which is understood to be a negative 1. Your b is the number in front of x, which is going to be 4. Your c is going to be the number with no variable, which is going to be a negative 3. So once you know a, b, and c, it should help you to work out everything else. Now, looking at your a, is a, which is a negative 1, is it going to be greater than 0 or less than 0? It is less than 0. Anytime it was less than 0, if we look at the notes, it said it was going to open down. So we know the graph has to open down. So let's keep that in mind. It's going to be opening down. We need to find a vertex. Well, we have to use a formula that they're giving us right here. X equals negative b divided by 2a. So I already know what a, b, and c are up on the top. So it's a negative b, my b is 4, divided by 2 times a, well a is a negative 1. So negative, this negative goes to the top only. So this negative is just for the b. So once we're here, what's a negative times 4? It's a negative 4. What's 2 times a negative 1? A negative 2. Now, negative 4 divided by a negative 2 is going to be a positive 2. This here is your x coordinate, but we need to find out what y is. How do we find out what y is? Well, we're going to have to go and plug it back into the top equation. So we're going to have to plug this in here for every x. So we have negative parentheses 2, because we're replacing the x with 2 since that's what we got right there, squared plus 4 times 2 minus 3. If we put that into the calculator, it should give us a 1. Now, these two numbers together, that gives you the coordinate of your vertex, which is 2, 1. It's asking us to go ahead and plot this point. So we're going to go over to the graph on the side and we're going to graph that point, which is 2, 1. Now, we should be able to do 3, which is draw the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry for this problem, remember the definition said it has to go through the vertex, and it is a vertical line that goes up and down. So if we have to draw a vertical line through 2, 1, it obviously has to be where x is 2. So we're going to draw a dotted line through x is 2. So looking at your vertex, your axis of symmetry is always going to be this number, whatever your x value is. Next thing we do, we look for c. C on the top, it says it's a negative 3. Now, negative 3 is going to be your y-intercept. So in order for me to know what point that is, I'm going to plug it in here. And it's going to be 0, negative 3. So on the y-axis, I am going to look for 0, negative 3, which is right there. So I only have 2 points, but in order for you to draw a parabola, you have to have at least 3 points. So we need to figure out how far is this point away from my axis of symmetry. So how far is it from there? From that axis of symmetry, I'm going to count, and it's 1, 2. So that means my other point, since it's reflected, it's divided into 2. If I move over 2 more, my dot should be right there. So these 3 dots, and that new dot that I put right here, the coordinate to that one is going to be 4, negative 3. And once you have those 3 dots, all you have to do is just connect them and make a little parabola. And like I said, it was going to open down, so there it is. We're not going to work on the bottom part. So continuing on to the next part. Let's actually look at the following example. So let's work out the example right here. So let's go ahead and look for the information that we need. We need to know who A, B, and C is. So we're doing the same thing as example 1. And to be honest, most of your worksheet deals with example 1 and this one. The maximum, minimum, we're not really looking for them. So let's figure out who A, B, and C are. If we look for A is the number in front of x squared, which is a positive 1. B is the number in front of x, which is a negative 4. C is a number by itself, so that right there is a 2. I need to go ahead and find out which way this opens. Who's my vertex? Using that formula, then I'm going to have to plug it into y equals. I also need my axis of symmetry. And I need to find out who my y-intercept is. So this is what you need in order to do the graph. Now, the front of your worksheet, which has only 6 questions, the first 6, you're only going to work up to here. So you're going to be looking for these 3 parts, which is which way does it open, what's my vertex, and the axis of symmetry. For the back part, and you omit number 10, you're going to have to go ahead and add all of it. It's going to include everything. So let's go ahead and first of all figure out which way is this going to open. Well, this is going to open up because my A is a positive 1. I need to substitute the values into the equation. So that means that it's a negative, but my B is a negative 4. So make sure you put a double negative there, because if not, you're going to make careless mistakes. Divided by 2 times my A, and my A is a 1. Now, negative times a negative 4 is a positive 4. And a positive 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now, please keep in mind, this is just my x coordinate. I need to go ahead and plug in that 2 into the top equation. So I have parentheses 2 squared minus 4 times 2 plus 2. Once I put that into the calculator, that's 4 minus 8 plus 2. That right there is going to be a negative 2. So both of these numbers together, both that one and that one, that's going to give you my vertex. So my vertex would be 2, negative 2. So let's go ahead and graph it on the number line, on the graph. So 2, negative 2 is going to be right there. I should be able to find my axis of symmetry because like I told you at the beginning, your axis of symmetry is just whatever the x is. So in this case, it's just x is equal to 2. I'm supposed to draw a vertical line, dotted vertical line going through there. Now I have to find the C. The C is 0, or the y-intercept, sorry. It is 0 and my C turned out to be a 2. So I'm going to put a point on 0, 2, which is right there. Now, how far am I from the axis of symmetry? It turns out to be 1, 2. So I have to go 1, 2 to the other side. We graph it. We go ahead and erase this. So those are 3 points, good enough for me to draw my parabola. So all these 4 steps, defining if it opens up, what's my vertex, what's my axis of symmetry, what's my y-intercept, that's how you're going to have to do the graphs in the back. And graphing it, numbers 11 through 15. We are going to omit 10. Now, the first 6 questions. The first 6 questions, and I'm going to do, not this one. I'm going to go ahead and do number 1 with you. So this is the problem that you get. You're going to have to find 3 parts. First, it's going to ask you, does it open up or down? Well, looking at your A, it's going to open down. And this is because A is -3, which means it's less than 0. Do you have to explain why? No. Next thing I need to find is my vertex. Now vertex, don't forget the formula, it's negative. Now, before I do that, I need to figure out who A, B, and C are. So A has to be a -3. Your B, is there an X in this equation? No, there isn't. So my B is going to be a 0. Now, who does not have a variable? The 1. So that's going to be your C. So the formula following X equals -B over 2A gives me a -0 over 2 times A, which is a -3. So that right there is 0 over -6, which is just a 0. Now this is the X coordinate to the vertex. But now I need to go make sure and I plug it into the top equation. So X equals -3, parentheses, instead of the X, we're going to put the 0 squared plus 1. When we put this into the calculator, I'm going to get a +1. So this here is the Y coordinate to the vertex. Now your axis of symmetry, because that's what it's asking for C, is just going to be X equals whatever this is. X is equal to 0. So those are 3 things you're looking for, 1 through 6. On 7 through 9, just match the graph. So pause it, review it, replay it. It's not that difficult. So you're doing 1 through 15, omit 10. And forget about the other parts of the notes for today. I hope you guys are enjoying your time away from school. Be careful. We'll see you either Thursday or Friday.